let's talk a little bit about jQuery. So I ran into jQuery quite a few years ago, and it was a very, very popular cross-browser JavaScript library that everybody was using and everybody was talking about. Now it's a little bit already old and moved out, but because people are starting to use the more robust frameworks. But I think that for many of the UI interactions and the way that it simplifies the work of the developer, it's still very, very useful, and I think it's being used by other frameworks and other libraries as well, even today. It's very, very big as well. It has its own library of plugins that you can integrate with. I'll talk about those later. It makes the work with a lot of the browser objects, changing things, creating animations, interacting with timers and user events and all that much, much easier. It's free, it's open source. It has many CDNs where it's stored, so you can access it online everywhere. So that's pretty much it. Like I mentioned, allows creation of all kinds of effects. So if you want to change the color of a certain element on screen, you can do it, but you can also animate it, so the colors will change gradually. You don't have to write a lot of code, you can do it for you. It's pretty easy to produce. I think I have a lot of demos related to how it works and some tricks you can do with it. Yeah, I'll also show you a demo of using Ajax calls, which makes it really, really easy to consume. jQuery is really easy. It's lightweight. The code is very small. You don't have to build a lot of stuff. It gives you a lot of access to everything in very little volume of code. You can build your own extensions to it. It's powerful. It's lightweight, like I mentioned. And I think the biggest benefit is that it supports cross-browser, so you can write your code. If you use jQuery, most of the time, whatever you build will work on all the modern browsers at once. You don't have to worry if the textual element of your HTML element is inner HTML or text content or whichever it is. You can just rely on the fact that it should work on all browsers. jQuery.com is where you start. It has fast documentation, plugins. You can download it from there, different versions of it. Once you get the file, you can either get it in a full-blown JavaScript, or you can get it in minified version, which is smaller. You know about minification. So if you take a JavaScript file and you change all the variables to one character, and you change all the functions to one character, and you just remove all the white spaces and all the line breaks, and you get a very, very long JavaScript file that contains everything at once in a very, very tiny size. This is in order to minimize traffic to your browser. You can load the script faster with less traffic. That's all. As I mentioned, it's also hosted on different servers, so you don't actually have to download it and embed it to your project. You can reference jQuery from one of these locations. Let's see if these links still work. Okay, so this one actually is hosted on jQuery.com, and this is version 1.10.1. And this is a minified version, so you can see that all the functions and variables and all that are all 1 character long. And this is the whole jQuery library condensed into one minified file. The same should be here. So the same file, but this time hosted on Microsoft.com. So you can use those CDNs as in online storage locations. Instead of hosting your file, you can directly reference those online stored files. Everything in jQuery starts with $sign. So all the references and $sign itself is also reserved for a function that loads runs when the page loads. I'll show you an example of this too. The easy way to get into an HTML element is using the selector. So this selector basically is a query selector, just like the ones we talked about earlier with DOM. Also complies with CSS. So if you know your object's tag name or ID or name or hierarchy, you can immediately grab it. So if you have a div, this will just give you back all the divs in the page. If you have anything with a class, so in CSS, when you want to define a class, you put a point, a dot, and then you give the class name. So here, if you want to get an element by class, you just put a dot in the name of the class, and you get to all the elements which have this class. If you want elements which are, so here we have a UL element, which has a class menu, so we have this dot, and underneath it we have an li, so it will get all the li elements under the UL element, which has the class name menu. So very easy to query objects like this. And once you have an element, it gives you a very big range of functions that you can use. For example, if you want to show an element, if it's right now not visible on the page, you put a dot to show it. If you want to hide it from the page, you put a dot to hide. If you want it to fade out, you can do a fade. You can attach event handlers to clicking, or basically once you have the element, you have this very big range of very small functions that you can just call, and they'll do all the work for you, regardless of which browser you're using or how you consume it. Let's see if I have something. Okay, eventually did it. So first thing, we are referencing the JavaScript file. So it's a minified version of jQuery 1.9.1, and it's hosted here. The parent library that we have here. Okay, this is a relative reference, so we're going up one library and we're taking /jQuery. And this is the structure of the page. So we have a header, we have a section, we have a side here, header and another list. And what do we get? We get all the list items, which are LIs, which are under ULs, and we're calling this print content function that actually is this one. So what we are doing is going to the content, which is this element here. We're just getting it by ID, so the easy way to do it with jQuery is just calling it like this with a hash. And we're calling the append, and what we're appending is paragraph with the text that we want to print out. So quite easily we are just creating an element and appending it to this element. So first thing we're printing is the length of the list items, and then we're going to, for example, the widget items, which we have more than one. No, we have an element with a widget, and we're printing out the text content of this widget. So this is the textual context that we're coming, that will give us from the content of this widget. And we're going to print everything here above the list, between the header and the list, because this is where we're printing it out. So the result is first we're printing the number 3, so because first we wanted to print how many list items we've got, and the second is that we're getting the text which was represented by these strings, and we're printing them out as well. So see, it's pretty easy to get an element, append a new element to it, just like that. Get all the list items, or get a specific element and get its inner text. So, of course, when you have a specific element, you can traverse next and previous siblings and parents and children. So we can also go through the UI. So you have next and previous, which are shorthand to getting the first and the previous and next sibling of the current element that you have. I want to show you actually everything that you're doing with jQuery, everything that you're getting with jQuery is a jQuery element. And you can feed it with a string like this, you can feed it with the actual element. I mean, you can get the HTML element itself through JavaScript, and you can feed it here into the brackets. This will also cast it into jQuery elements. I'll show you. So, in this example, what we're doing, we're getting the first list item, so we're getting the li, all the li elements on the page as a collection, and we're calling first to get the first of them. So we will get this one. And then we're going to the first dot next, so we are in this element, we're going to the next sibling, and we're printing out number 2. So just as easy as this.
Can we also specify in brackets?
Specify what?
The first element.
You can specify in yeah, you can. Actually, I want to show a few things in the browser too. So what do we see? Let's see first what we're doing here. So we have the list of elements here, they're all LIs. Then we have the result div, so we're going to write into it. And here we have, again, a print result that will go to the result div, which is this one, by ID, and append text, just text to it. The first thing that we're getting is the special item, that's the one with the special class, this one. And we're printing the text. Then we're going to the next element and printing the text, and to the previous element and printing the text. So what we're actually printing out is 3, which is the special one, then the next element and the previous one. What I wanted to show is actually what you're getting when you are using jQuery. Come on. Here is our element here. Okay, so this will return the element in the jQuery object. And this object has a few properties that it will always have. We can check how many objects were returned, And if we go to the actual element, that's the real HTML element. But the wrapper element is always jQuery style. So in this case, for example, if I go to check all the list items on the page, it doesn't matter how my selector, what type of selector I'm using. So if I'm doing a selection like this, I want to check by ID like this, then again, I'm getting the jQuery element. No, sorry, of course, because I don't have a list item by ID. I got 0. But if I go to this by type name, then we have the length, and each of those elements in my returned array, or so-called array, or like array, are actually the elements. So if I go to first, let's say, this is already an HTML element, and it gets printed out as a representation, string representation. Also, get element by ID, for example, what IDs do I have? Result. Suppose that I have this div here, which I got by the standard JavaScript call. I can wrap it with jQuery as well. So if I get an element in any form, I get an element object like this, I can do a jQuery like this, and I will get it jQueried. So I will have all the jQuery prototype also added to my element, just like that. See the difference? I'll show you what's the difference. Just a minute. Here the console. So once I do this, what I have inside my brackets, the get element by ID, is a standard JavaScript call. But what I want to show is it doesn't matter how I got this element. If I have a HTML element at hand, let's say, I can always wrap it in jQuery, and then I can call jQuery methods. So I just change the text by calling the jQuery extension method text. Or I can change it with HTML if I call the jQuery HTML method. Just as simple as that. If I didn't have that and I was using the element just like that, then I don't have those extensions, and I have to start using the regular JavaScript extensions, which vary from one browser to another. But what I want to show is that whatever you have, if you get this element by another JavaScript call, or you got it from some other external call, you have a JavaScript element, you can either query it by ID, like this, and you'll get the element, but this is already wrapped in jQuery, so I can use all the functions that are in the prototype, and there are many, that I can call right away. And there's always a count, so I can always check if this received something. So I got 1, but if I give a wrong ID that doesn't exist, it would still be okay. It will not be undefined, it will not fail, but I can check that I right now have no elements, but still it would be okay to call even a function. It would still work, it will not fail, it will not do anything, but it's fail-safe. So if you get something with a jQuery, and you get a jQuery object like this, it's like a selector that tries to find all the matching elements on the page and run this function. Here's, for example, again, I'll clear it off. And we get the li, but this will return all the li's, 5 on the page. And I call it a function. Come on. Then all of them get a affected at once. Even if there are 0, I can still call this function. It will still be okay. So it's very powerful on one hand. It's very simple to use, and it doesn't matter if you successfully get the object or not. So you can call it anyway if you want it to do the work for you, and it will do the work if it can. Even if there are no elements, you can still call this function. If it doesn't find them, nothing will happen. But if it does, then all of them will get affected at once. And if you have an object from another source, you can just grab it in the jQuery $bracket, and it will still have all this immediately appended. So that's cool, right? More functions that we see here, parent, and we have parent and we have parents. So again, JavaScript jQuery is very friendly and allows you to do selections of other elements just as freely. So you can check for specific parent. So if we call the object of parent, what we get is the immediate parent of the current element. So here, let's see, we have this li, which is the third one, which has a class special, and we can get it by the class name here. And here we're getting the parent. So the parent, the immediate parent of this is this one, the UL. And we can immediately go to the attribute and set the attribute, read the attribute of ID. One more thing which is cool about jQuery, in many cases, you have one method that also reads and writes. So if you want to read the HTML of an element, you just call the HTML function. If you want to write HTML to the element, you call the HTML function and just send it something. And same here. If you want to get an attribute, you just call the .attribute, ATTR, and with the name of the attribute you want to read. If you want to write an attribute, you use the same, and you just add another argument to say what you want to write. So in this case, we will get the ID of the immediate parent, so this will be this ID, and we'll get it logged. However, if you call parents with S, you can select which parents you want to, which of the parents in the hierarchy of the current object you want to select. Okay? How do you write what?
In the element?
You just call the same function. I'll show you
Okay.
in a minute in the browser. So we have a demo, and I'll show you in the browser what's happening. Okay, so it's again the same list and the same result where we're writing stuff, and we have the print result, which just goes to the result and appends a paragraph every time we want to write some text. Special item is the one with the class special, which is under well with this ID, and under div with this ID, and under div with this ID. So here we're writing to the console the actual item that we got, and we're printing. So here we're going to the immediate parent, and here we're going to the immediate parents with the ID, which are divs. In that case, this will give us a collection of these two parents. And if we get the parents with wrapper, then we'll get only the one that matches our selector. So, just a second, and I'll show you also about the read and write. Okay, so the first thing that happened is we write to the console the special item. So what we get in the console is actually this one. We have one match, which matches this class name that we've given, and we can see its properties here. And this is the actual HTML property, as I said before. Okay. And then we are writing out. So first, we're writing this ID, which is the ID attribute of the immediate parent here. Then we are writing the ID of, I'm not sure if this would give more, because this one has 2 IDs. And what we're getting here, let me see just a second. Something is fishy. Actually, I can just go to the console. So this is our list item, as before. That's what we put into the variable. And I want to see this one. So, yeah, like I suspected. Well, what we're actually getting here, I'm not sure why it's printing out just one, but we're getting 2 elements that are parents of this element and are with the tag name div. 2 elements who are divs, who are parents of this element, the inner wrapper and the wrapper. So I'm not sure why this thing printed just one ID, but maybe it's the way that this is manipulated here. In any case, parents will get all the parents that fall into the category that we're trying to filter in the brackets. And in terms of reading and writing, like I mentioned, here's again our jQuery element. And so if I want to change something, I can call. So if I call the method HTML without giving anything, I'll get the inner HTML of this element. Same if I go with text. But if I want to change something, I just need to append the same function, just call it with some content. So it gets changed. And if we have, for example, so we got the class name, and I think we can just change the class name. And now when I call the get attribute, I'll get a new class name. So basically you can use the same functions here, for example, text to get the text, HTML to read or to write. So I can make changes or read stuff from the UI just using the same functions. That's very powerful. If I want to read an attribute, I just call the attribute. If I want to write an attribute, I call it and I supply the new value. And it gets immediately effective. And that's why it's so easy and cool to use. Okay, so if you want to create elements, again, very simple. You can just put a string representing your HTML that you want and put it in brackets. It will immediately become a jQuery element, and you can append it to any element you want. So we are expecting to have in the document one element which has the tag body. So we can select by tag name like this, and we can take this HTML just as it is, make it into jQuery, so we get all the jQuery prototype functions, and so we can call immediately append to and append it. Or we can prepend, so append in the end or prepend just before the selected object. You can just select it like this, and then prepend a header just before the body. Yeah, and yeah, like I mentioned, you just create an element by supplying. You can just supply your HTML code, wrap it in brackets, and you get yourself a ready-to-use jQuery-fied element. So example, we have a div here called holder, and here we're retrieving it with jQuery by ID, and we're just appending a header. And then we're taking and creating another, just a piece of HTML, which is a list with A, B, C elements, and we just prepend them to the folder. So we'll have this list appearing here between these two. And we're appending here a header. We'll have this list and then header. So here's the list and here's the header, and you can see that those were appended here inside the folder. Okay, removing elements just as easy. Just catch the elements you want to remove and call remove function. So you don't always. Okay, I'll show you. You don't always want to really alter your UI. You don't want to start removing elements from there. It's a bit risky and it's a little bit, let's say, how to say, violent. To just take elements from your page and remove them. In many cases, what you really want to do is hide them on the page. So, for example, jQuery has the option called hide or show. And then you can also remove, and then they're never coming back. So that's one. Oh, okay, lots of stuff. No. Okay, so we have a list, probably. Button that says delete event. Okay, and first thing we're doing is appending 50 list items into our list, just creating them inline as HTML and appending them. And then whenever you click on the button, so again, just get the element and get the function on, get the event you want to call, put the function you want to call, and that's it. That's how you tie events. So once we've done this, every time the button gets clicked, we're getting this is the list again, all the items which are even on the list. Okay, so we are going to remove the even items in the list. That's the same selector that also works in CSS to select even and odd elements. And once we have them, as usual, we get a collection into jQuery collection. You can just call remove, and they'll be removed. So here are all the items in the list. They're structured nicely in boxes. Due to CSS, button if we click, we removed all the even numbered ones. So 0, 2, 4, and so on. What else? we just saw, once you have a jQuery object representing an element, you can do many things with them. There are many functions that you can call, like the hide and show and add and remove. You can add and remove classes. So these are CSS classes where you can toggle a class to add and remove it if you want. Turn it on or off. On to attach an event, just like we saw with the click, or off to detach events. You can animate, you can fade. I'll show you more examples of my own in a second. Yeah, so these are other examples. So for example, you want to change the CSS specific styling. You just call .css, which property you want to change and what you want to change it to. Just as simple as that. You want to change HTML or to read the HTML, just like I showed you, you call HTML. You want to change the text, call text. That makes it really easy to interact with these properties. So we have this also. Okay. So once we're loading the page, we're going to the result, which is this div, and what we're appending into it is a script, just an inline script that does an alert. And then we're appending into it the same script. What you will see is that when we're appending HTML, basically we are actually appending this as an HTML block. It means it will become a script block in the page and it will get executed. But the next thing we do is append it as a text, the same string. But since we're appending it as text, jQuery will make sure that this is appended as HTML safe string, and we'll append it to it as a text that you can actually see on the page. So there's a difference between appending it as HTML and appending it as text. So first of all, we got the alert when we first put the JavaScript. And the second, we appended this, and you can see that this is now stringified as a safely visible string. Maybe better to break here, just to see it again in slow motion. So the first thing we do is append the script, and when we append the script to the page, it immediately gets executed, and we get this alert popping up. And now we're on this line, and when we're appending the same string as text, jQuery will make sure it's escaped as a browser safe, and will not actually execute it, but put it in a way that you can see it. So now it's appended. Otherwise, you would have to take the string and make sure that it doesn't have such things, and you have to append it as a safe string and change those pointy brackets to something safe. So if we look at the current, well, it doesn't show it right, but it's showing it as normal HTML, but that actually, in order to do this, you have to append your HTMLs with safe escaped content. jQuery makes sure it happens. Events, we've seen events, so here's a button, and we want to attach the click event. There are also specific extension methods for click, so if you want to attach a click event, you can do it with a shorthand without going on and then specify click, but you can just say .click, do something. So here we are specifying a function, and we are attaching it to the click event. Also, when you're dealing with jQuery, we have a closure here, so that when we are running into this function, this will be the current element that invoke this function. And if you want to make sure that this is jQueryfied and you want to use jQuery functions, you can just wrap it immediately with jQuery brackets and use it as a normal element. So let's quickly see this too. Okay. So we have a few buttons here, of course. Let's see first what's happening. So one thing that we see here, which is also very commonly used, we want to run our script once the page loads. There is a shorter way to do this than this. I'll show you in a second. But if you want to do it with JavaScript without using jQuery, you have to do the body on load equals some function and then append the function. And if you want to do it with jQuery, you just do document, which is now, this is the document element, but now this is a jQueryfied document element. You can call the function ready and attach a function to it. So when the document is ready, when the page finished loading, then it's safe to go to all the elements that are loaded on the page. So this is the right way to do it. Wait for the page to load, then catch this button and assign a click. On button click, that's the function that will be triggered. This one. So it will take, okay, what we're doing is getting the element which is currently has the current class and removing this class from it, and taking the element that was actually clicked and assigning the current class to it. So we are just tabulating which element is being with the current class. So current makes it bold. So every time we click on an element on a button, it will become bold, and the previous button that was bold will become unbold. So that's what we're doing here. And every time we are, so again, we have a text box, we're getting it by ID, and on change, so that means every time we change the text in the text box, we are also triggering an event. And on input change, we are going to the result and appending the current value. So if you have an input, a control on your page, for example, this would now represent the text box, okay, because this is the text box, and we're triggering this event. So in the context of this function, the $this will be the triggering element, which means the text box. If you want to read value of a text box, the text in it, all you've got to do is call val. If you want to change it, you can call val and put a string, it will change. So every time somebody changes the text box, it will append the text that was changed into this result as a new paragraph. And we have an UL every time we click an li element in our UL list. We're calling optimize click, which does what? Appends to it the text clicked. Okay, so we have three things happening. Clicking the button, clicking a button should change it to bold and remove the bold from the previous button. Changing the text will append the text to the result, and clicking your li element will put the word click next to it. Let's hope it all works. Okay, so now this button is bold, and when I click another one, so we are appending here the text and click. Okay, we're appending it here, not in there. And when I change text, and when I focus out of it, we're getting the changed text appended as well. And every time we click a button, we're changing the class and also appending this. So this is all very interactive, but very simple to tie it all together. I mean, this is a very small code to do if you want to achieve this level of interactivity. And if you want to change things on the document, this is really lightweight and simple. Okay, let's see some more stuff. Okay, I'm not sure how much this demonstrates the easiness of things, but what I've created is an expandable tree with jQuery. So you can expand elements or contract them back. So this is all done with selectors. Just when the document loads, I'm attaching everything to place. So for example, you can change the pointer. Every time I hover, my pointer changes. I can just say, every time you reach this element, so here is a selector. Selectors are just strings here. Every time you get an element with this selector, every time I hover the mouse, make the CSS style of the cursor to a pointer. Then hide all the siblings. Then I'm actually saving the old HTML and appending it to new HTML. So I'm actually I'm using a very simple jQuery function called slide toggle that allows me to hide or unhide a specific element. I mean, again, what I want to show is the lightness of the code and the simplicity of how this can be built. Here on GitHub, I shared this project called Visit 6 o'clock. So now I have to show this. This is purely jQuery. And these cats just move in random speeds to random places. If it wasn't 6 o'clock, I'll try. How I should do this. Oh, come on. Windows 10.
Yeah.
It's very complicated. This, and when you load it before, you get just this, and when it becomes 6, you get the green. It's too complicated. Meanwhile, this is just using, again, jQuery. There's all kinds of functions to calculate where the cats are going to move to and how fast, but this is all just random, so I'm taking the windows and I'm trying to see different coordinates. But once you get the coordinates, all you got to do is, let me show you, you get an element and you just call the jQuery animate. Where you want to animate it to, how, what speed you want. So the speed is also, you see, a random function. So I'm calculating where to move it. So I have just a for loop counting all the cats, and each cat's just getting the next location, then the next speed, and I'm just calling animate, and that's it. They just move. And once this is done, I'm setting another timeout to run this function again after 100 milliseconds to move them again. So every time, they just move away, move places. Now I'm stuck. Let's put it to 6. Something is not happening. Okay. So this is again the function that calculates the time that is counting here, so we'll know how many minutes passed, 2 or 4. But again, this is just a calculator. So there. I don't know if there's anything else to show about jQuery here, but I think it's what I wanted to show is the easiness of animation. As for Ajax, another example. So if you want to use Ajax from jQuery, it's fairly simple. All you got to do is call the $.ajax. So here, for example, one thing that I want to show is I mentioned the fact that when you want to run your functions when the document loads, so you can do the document.ready, or you can just do $ and open and put a function. And that's it. This will be the document loaded handler. It's very simple and short. So when the page is loaded, get the button, and the click event will trigger this function. Just like that. Very simple and short. Then, if you want to call a function, when I want to make a service call, so I'm putting a loading panel, so there'll be a please wait, and then I'm just calling $.ajax URL, what kind of request, what do you want to send. In this case, it's a service that just waits as much as you tell it to wait, so it will wait, I think, 10 seconds and come back. And if there is a successful response, we just want to print it out, response from the server. If there's an error, so this is just a JavaScript object that we're doing, putting all the properties of the request and calling it, and that's it. So it's really, really easy to initiate service calls. So if I'm clicking the button, now I have to create this wait loading panel. So now I'm waiting for the service to return, whether it's going to be an error or a success. So we got this response from the server, blah, 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 from GitHub, because it's just a test service. But really, really easy to communicate with services. If you want to learn more, go to jQuery UI. Go to jQuery.com. jQuery UI is a very popular extension that you might want to use if you want to use fancy UI tricks. So, of course, jQuery gives you all the stuff you need in order to create animations and things, but jQuery UI has many built-in objects, and you can customize your own jQuery UI library if you need only specific things. So, which version of jQuery it's going to be based on, what things do you want to have? Draggable elements, routable, you want accordions, you want buttons, whatever you need, you just click here and it will download a customized copy of jQuery UI with just with the things you need. So this gives a lot of power, and there are many demos of what's what and how it works, different widgets like accordion, which is extendable sections. I can collapse one and open another, and so on. So this is all just out of the box and very powerful library. You can build your own plugins. There's jQuery Mobile if you want to integrate jQuery into your mobile app. Yeah, of course, W3 schools also have their own jQuery stuff, so you can also get examples from there, pretty much about every jQuery function out there. The experiments, the Chrome experiments, and this experiment site has some mind-blowing experiments and JavaScript stuff that you might want to take a look at. And a lot of it is based also on jQuery. So for example, now I will launch this, it will open a window with a ball, but I can also create another window, and I can move the ball between the windows, things like that. And it's not very useful, but it's really cool. And Chrome experiments, this site is really has people do some crazy stuff. So, and every sample that is uploaded here is listed with what technologies it's been written. So you can, for example, I made a search to jQuery, and these demos are aided by jQuery. So there's some crazy demos. I'm not even sure what they do, but you can see some crazy stuff that people do with all kinds of front-end technologies, including jQuery. I don't know what's going to happen. Actually, I think I have no idea. Great. Okay. Good sign. Good time to finish. Oh, great. Okay. So, Thank you guys again, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Is there a next step?
No.